Picture this. You're driving down a familiar road you've traveled 1,000 times before, doing everything you think is right, when suddenly blue and red lights flash in your rearview mirror. Your heart sinks as you pull over, wondering what you possibly did wrong. The officer approaches and informs you that you've just violated a road rule that changed months ago, one you had no idea even existed. You're now facing a hefty fine, demerit points on your license, and the sinking realization that you've been breaking the law without even knowing it. This exact scenario is happening to thousands of Australian drivers right now because road rules are constantly evolving, new technologies are changing how we interact with our vehicles, and enforcement methods are becoming more sophisticated than ever before. The road rules you learned when you first got your license years ago might not be enough to keep you legal in 2026. Today, I'm breaking down every critical road rule update you need to know right now to avoid fines, keep your license, and stay safe on Australian roads. Let me start with something that's catching out even the most careful drivers: mobile phone rules that have become stricter than most people realize. Yes, everyone knows you can't hold your phone while driving, but the 2026 enforcement goes far beyond that simple rule. Touching your phone for any reason while driving, even if it's mounted in a holder, is now illegal in most situations unless you're using specific functions. You can touch your phone to answer or end a call, use audio functions like music or podcasts, or use GPS navigation, but only if the phone is secured in a commercially designed holder fixed to the vehicle. The phone cannot be resting on any part of your body, sitting in your lap, wedged between your seat and console, or held in your hand even for a split second. What's catching drivers completely off guard is that you cannot touch your phone to do things that seem harmless. Checking a text message at a red light, even if the car is stationary with the handbrake on, is illegal. Changing your music playlist while stopped in traffic will cost you. Dismissing a notification that pops up on your screen is against the law. Looking at your phone to check the time when your car is stopped is a violation. Many drivers think that if the car isn't moving, these actions are fine. They're absolutely not. The only exception is if you're legally parked, meaning you've pulled completely off the road into a parking space or zone. Being stopped at traffic lights, stuck in a traffic jam, or pulled over on the shoulder does not count as being parked. The penalties for mobile phone offenses have increased substantially across Australian states and territories. In New South Wales, you're looking at a fine of over $500 and 5 demerit points, which doubles during double demerit periods. In Victoria, it's more than $550 and 4 demerit points. Queensland hits you with over $1,000 and 4 demerit points. Western Australia charges around $1,000 and 4 demerit points. These aren't just threats either. Mobile phone detection cameras are now operating across Australia, using artificial intelligence to scan through windscreens and identify drivers using their phones. These cameras work day and night in any weather conditions and can catch you even in heavy traffic when you think you're hidden among other vehicles. The intersection between technology and road rules extends to other devices as well. Smartwatches have become a gray area that's causing confusion. Technically, if you're interacting with a smartwatch in a way that distracts you from driving, you can be penalized. However, the rules weren't written with smartwatches in mind, so enforcement varies. Police generally take the view that if you're actively swiping, tapping, or looking at your smartwatch while driving, you're distracted driving. Glancing at a notification for a fraction of a second is less likely to get you in trouble, but actively reading messages or responding to your watch is definitely going to be considered an offense. The safest approach is to put your smartwatch in Do Not Disturb mode when driving, just as you would with your phone. Speed limit enforcement has evolved dramatically with new technology that's far more sophisticated than traditional speed cameras. Average speed cameras, also called point-to-point cameras, are now widespread across Australian highways and major roads. These systems photograph your vehicle at one location and then again at another location further down the road, calculating your average speed between the 2 points. You cannot simply slow down when you see a camera and then speed up again. If your average speed between the two cameras exceeds the limit, you'll receive a fine even if you were doing the speed limit at the exact moment you passed each camera. These systems are particularly common in roadwork zones and on rural highways where speeding has historically been a problem. Mobile speed cameras have also become far more covert and difficult to spot. The old days of obvious vans parked on the side of the road are largely over. Modern mobile speed cameras can be concealed in parked cars, operated from unmarked vehicles, mounted on trailers that look like construction equipment, or even operated by officers standing on footpaths. Some jurisdictions have removed the requirement for warning signs before mobile speed camera locations, meaning you have no advance notice that your speed is being monitored. The tolerance for speeding has also decreased in many areas. While there's technically a small tolerance built into detection equipment, some states are enforcing speed limits at just 3 kilometers per hour over the posted limit in certain circumstances, particularly in school zones. School zones deserve special attention because the rules and enforcement have intensified significantly. School zone speed limits, typically 40 kilometers per hour, apply during specific times on school days. The exact times vary by state, but generally cover the morning period when children are arriving and the afternoon period when they're leaving. What catches drivers out is that these times apply even on pupil-free days, during school holidays in some jurisdictions, and on days when you don't see any children present. The school zone is still legally in effect based on the times shown on the signs, regardless of whether school is actually in session. Some states have introduced flashing lights on school zone signs that activate only when the reduced speed limit applies, which removes some confusion, but in areas without these lights, you need to know the times and strictly observe them. Penalties for speeding in school zones are deliberately harsh to deter violations. You can expect fines that are double or triple the normal speeding penalty, higher demerit point allocations, and in some cases, automatic license suspension for serious speeding offenses in school zones. Some states use double demerit points in school zones all year round, not just during holiday periods like they do for regular speeding offenses. If you're caught doing 60 in a 40-zone school area, you're 20 kilometers per hour over the limit, which typically results in substantial fines, significant demerit points, and potentially a suspension depending on your state and driving history. Roundabout rules are another area where many Australian drivers get it wrong and enforcement is increasing. The fundamental rule that most people mess up is indicating when exiting a roundabout. You must indicate left when you're leaving the roundabout, regardless of which direction you're heading. If you're going straight through a roundabout, you don't indicate as you enter, but you must indicate left as you pass the exit before your intended exit. If you're turning right at a roundabout, you indicate right as you enter, keep indicating right as you travel through the roundabout, and then change to indicating left as you pass the exit before yours. Failing to indicate when exiting a roundabout can result in fines and demerit points, and police are specifically targeting this violation because it causes confusion and crashes. Another roundabout rule that drivers constantly violate is lane positioning in multi-lane roundabouts. If you're going straight ahead or turning left, you must use the left lane unless road markings indicate otherwise. If you're turning right or making a U-turn, you must use the right lane unless road markings say differently. You cannot enter a roundabout in the right lane and then exit to the left across another lane unless you're in a single lane that splits into multiple exit lanes. This rule exists to prevent sideswipe collisions, but it's violated constantly, particularly at busy urban roundabouts where drivers try to position themselves in whatever lane seems to be moving faster. Merging rules have been clarified and enforcement has increased, particularly the zipper merge rule. When two lanes merge into one, vehicles must take turns in a one-for-one alternating pattern like a zipper. You cannot speed up to block someone from merging, deliberately close the gap to prevent merging, or refuse to allow vehicles to merge in turn. Equally, merging vehicles cannot force their way in, expecting other vehicles to slam on their brakes. The vehicle ahead has right-of-way, but the vehicle behind must leave sufficient space for one vehicle to merge. This seems simple, but it's one of the most common sources of road rage and traffic disputes because drivers fundamentally misunderstand who has right-of-way in merging situations. When lanes are ending rather than merging, different rules apply. If a lane is ending, shown by lane markings and signs indicating the lane will end, vehicles in the ending lane must give way to vehicles in the continuing lane. You cannot simply indicate and expect vehicles in the continuing lane to let you in. You must wait for a safe gap and merge when it's safe to do so without causing vehicles in the continuing lane to brake or swerve. This is different from a zipper merge where both lanes are equally valid until the merge point. Understanding the difference between a lane ending and a proper merge is crucial for following the rules correctly. Pedestrian crossing rules have also been tightened and penalties increased. At a pedestrian crossing without traffic lights, you must give way to any pedestrian on or entering the crossing. The critical update that catches drivers is that you must give way to pedestrians who are clearly intending to cross, even if they haven't stepped onto the crossing yet. If someone is standing at the edge of a zebra crossing, clearly waiting to cross, you're required to stop and give way. You cannot speed past them hoping they'll wait for you. This has become a significant enforcement focus because pedestrian deaths and injuries at crossings remain unacceptably high. The 3-meter rule around pedestrians has also been introduced in some jurisdictions and may expand nationally. In certain areas, you must leave at least 1 meter when passing a pedestrian in a zone up to 60 kilometers per hour or 1.5 meters in zones above 60 kilometers per hour. This applies when there's no physical separation, like a curb between you and the pedestrian. If you cannot leave this distance, you must slow down to a safe speed. This rule primarily affects country roads where pedestrians might be walking on the shoulder, but it also applies to urban areas where pedestrians are close to the travel lane. Bicycle passing rules have been standardized across most of Australia after years of confusion. You must leave a minimum of 1 meter when passing a bicycle rider in zones up to 60 kilometers per hour or 1.5 meters in zones above 60 kilometers per hour. To provide this space, you are permitted to cross center lines, even solid single unbroken center lines, provided you can see it's safe to do so and you don't inconvenience oncoming traffic. This rule overrides the general prohibition on crossing unbroken center lines in this specific circumstance. The fine for passing too close to a cyclist can exceed $500 in most states, and police have begun using video evidence from cyclists' cameras to prosecute drivers who endanger them. Intersection rules have been refined to address common points of confusion and conflict. When turning right at an intersection, you must approach and turn from as close to the center of the road as practicable. You cannot turn right from the left lane unless there are specific markings or signs allowing it. When two vehicles are turning right at an intersection from opposite directions, both intending to turn into the same road, they should pass in front of each other, not behind each other. This is the standard right turn practice unless the intersection is marked otherwise. However, at some intersections, particularly those with painted islands or specific designs, you might be required to pass behind each other. You need to observe the road markings and follow what they indicate. Give way rules at uncontrolled intersections still confuse many drivers despite being fundamental road rules. At an intersection without signs or signals, you must give way to any vehicle approaching from your right. This applies whether you're going straight, turning left, or turning right. The vehicle on your right has right of way. However, if you're turning right, you must also give way to any vehicle approaching from ahead that's going straight through or turning left. Essentially, if you're turning right at an uncontrolled intersection, you give way to almost everyone except vehicles approaching from your left who are also turning right. These situations require careful observation and defensive driving because you cannot assume other drivers know or follow these rules. Traffic light rules seem straightforward, but there are specific violations that enforcement has focused on recently. When a traffic light turns yellow, you must stop unless you're so close to the intersection that stopping would be dangerous. The key word is dangerous, not inconvenient or abrupt. If you can safely stop before the intersection when the light turns yellow, you're required by law to stop. Accelerating to beat a yellow light is specifically prohibited. If the light turns red while you're in the intersection, that's legal as long as you entered on yellow. But entering an intersection on red, even by a fraction of a second, is illegal and attracts significant penalties. Blocking intersections has become a major enforcement priority in congested urban areas. You cannot enter an intersection even on a green light If traffic conditions mean you'll be stuck in the intersection when the light turns red, you must wait behind the white line until there's enough space on the other side of the intersection for your vehicle to completely clear the intersection. This rule is frequently violated during peak hour traffic when drivers try to inch forward through intersections, creating gridlock. Police and traffic authorities have increased fines for blocking intersections because it creates congestion that affects hundreds of other road users. Parking rules have been updated with new technology and increased fines, making violations more costly than ever. In major cities, parking inspectors now use license plate recognition cameras mounted on vehicles that drive through streets, automatically scanning every parked car. These systems instantly detect if your registration is expired, if you've overstayed your paid parking time, if you're parked in a prohibited zone, or if you've violated parking restrictions. You cannot rely on parking inspectors not noticing your vehicle anymore because the camera system flags violations automatically and tickets are issued electronically. Disability parking enforcement has also intensified with higher fines and more serious consequences. Using a disability parking permit that doesn't belong to you, using an expired permit, or parking in a disability space without a valid permit can result in fines exceeding $600 in some jurisdictions. Authorities now cross-reference disability parking permits with driver license databases, photograph vehicles in disability spaces, and verify that the permit holder is actually present. If you're dropping off or picking up a person with a disability permit, they must be with you and getting in or out of the vehicle. You cannot use their permit to park while you run errands without them. Towing and load securing rules have been tightened after several serious accidents involving unsecured loads. Any load you're carrying must be secured so it cannot fall from the vehicle or move in a way that makes the vehicle unstable. This includes items in roof racks, trailers, truck beds, or even inside vehicles if they could come through windows or windscreens in a sudden stop. Carrying loads that overhang your vehicle requires specific markings and in some cases permits depending on how far they extend. Mattresses tied to roof racks with inadequate securing, furniture hanging precariously out of utes, and trailers loaded beyond their capacity are all targeted violations. If your load falls onto the road and causes damage or injury, you can face criminal charges beyond just traffic offenses. Trailer and caravan towing has specific rules that many recreational towers don't fully understand. Your trailer must have functioning brake lights, indicators, and reflectors. If the trailer exceeds certain weight limits relative to your towing vehicle, it must have its own braking system. You need to ensure your vehicle is rated to tow the weight you're pulling, considering both the trailer weight and everything loaded onto it. Speed limits for vehicles towing trailers or caravans are often lower than standard limits, particularly on highways. In many states, if you're towing a trailer or caravan, you're limited to 100 kilometers per hour, even where the general speed limit is 110. Learner and provisional license holders have further restrictions on towing that vary by state. Fatigue management rules apply to all drivers, not just commercial operators, though they're more strictly enforced for commercial vehicles. You're required to take rest breaks during long drives and must not drive while impaired by fatigue. While there are no specific maximum driving hours for private vehicles like there are for trucks, if you're involved in an accident and evidence suggests you were fatigued, you can be charged with driving in a dangerous manner. Police are trained to recognize signs of driver fatigue and can require you to take a rest break if they believe you're too tired to drive safely. Refusing to comply can result in penalties and your vehicle being grounded until you've rested. Drug driving enforcement has expanded dramatically, with mobile drug testing units now operating across all Australian states and territories. Police can randomly stop vehicles and require you to undertake a saliva test for cannabis, methamphetamine, MDMA, and cocaine. Unlike alcohol, where there's a legal limit below which you can drive, drug driving laws operate on a zero-tolerance basis. Any detectable amount of these drugs in your system while driving is illegal, regardless of when you consumed them or whether you feel impaired. This has caught out many people who used cannabis days earlier and still returned a positive test, resulting in license suspension, substantial fines, and criminal convictions. The penalties for drug driving are severe and consistent across Australia. First offense typically results in automatic license disqualification for at least 3 months, fines of around $2,000, and a criminal conviction that appears on police checks. Subsequent offenses result in longer disqualifications, higher fines, and potential imprisonment. If you're caught drug driving and refuse to provide a sample, the penalties are even worse, often equivalent to a high-range drug driving offense even if you had no drugs in your system. The technology has advanced to the point where roadside tests are highly accurate, and challenging results in court has become extremely difficult. Alcohol limits remain at 0.05 blood alcohol concentration for full license holders and 0 for learner, provisional, and some professional license holders. What has changed is enforcement methods, with more random breath testing stations, increased use of mobile testing units that can set up anywhere, and longer operating hours, including early morning testing, to catch people who are still over the limit from drinking the night before. Many drivers don't realize they can still be over the limit the morning after heavy drinking. Your body processes approximately 1 standard drink per hour. So if you have 10 drinks finishing at midnight, you might still be over 0.05 at 8 in the morning. The consequences of drink driving have also escalated, with most states now requiring mandatory alcohol interlocks for all drink driving offenses, not just high-range offenses. An alcohol interlock is a device installed in your vehicle that requires you to provide a breath sample before the car will start. If alcohol is detected, the car won't start. You must pay for installation, monthly monitoring fees, and removal of the device, which typically costs several $1,000s over the required installation period. This is in addition to fines, license disqualification, and the criminal conviction. Understanding these updated road rules isn't just about avoiding fines and keeping your license, though those are obviously important. It's about being a safer driver, reducing your risk of being involved in a crash, and contributing to making Australian roads safer for everyone. The road rules we have exist because people died or were seriously injured in circumstances that the rules are designed to prevent. Every rule about mobile phones, every speed limit, every giveaway requirement exists because of real crashes that hurt real people. When you see road rule changes, they're not arbitrary bureaucracy. They're responses to data, crash statistics, and emerging risks on our roads. The best way to stay current with road rules is to regularly check your state or territory road authority website, read the updates they publish, and honestly assess whether you're following all the rules you know about. Many of us develop bad habits over years of driving, doing things that are actually illegal but that we've gotten away with so many times we forget they're violations. Challenge yourself to drive by the actual rules for a week, not by the habits you've developed. You'll probably be surprised by how many little things you've been doing wrong. With enforcement technology improving constantly and penalties increasing, now is the time to refresh your knowledge and commit to legal, safe driving practices that will protect you, your license, and everyone else sharing the road.